Welcome back. It's Ed Martin. It's Eagle Countdown, and we're finishing strong tonight because I've been looking forward to this. In fact, I think, Lee, I don't know if we've ever met face-to-face, have we? No, first time, which is very cool. I've had Lee on my radio show a bunch of times, and for all our folks, I just did get a text from one of our viewers who said, do me a favor and tell everybody to share this on social media, on Twitter and everywhere. Share the Eagle Countdown and get the word out in general. And we'll be back, don't forget, we'll be back again tomorrow, 2 more nights, so 2 more late afternoon, 4 o'clock East Coast time. And I mentioned Senator Grassley will be in tomorrow. We'll have a message from Rand Paul. I think it'll be recorded earlier in the day, and a lot more. So our next guest, though, is Lee Smith, who I would say has the distinction. He's been a journalist and a writer, but in the last couple of years, he's written 2 books, The Plot Against the President, which was a bestseller, and then this newest one, which is called The Permanent Coup: How Enemies, Foreign and Domestic, Targeted the American President. Lee Smith, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Ed, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure.
It's great to be here. Now, before we get to the book a little bit, I want to ask you, our Eagles are across the country and the world. I know at least one is in Poland watching. But I ask people, this book we put together, Top 100 Trump Promises Made, Promises Kept. First question for everybody on, what's your... Of all the things that you heard the candidate Trump say, became president these 3.5 years, what's your favorite promise kept?
Yeah, there's a lot. The big one right now, which I write about in the book, and which I wrote an article last week in Tablet magazine. The big one, and it's enormous. I really think that this is what the last 4 years have been about. This is what the last 6 months have been about, and that was candidate Donald Trump's promise to challenge China, and that's what he's done, and that's why we are seeing an enormously brutal response to now President Trump. And we look at the different things that have been going on. The way that I describe it is I refer to it as the China class, right? And so what they're doing is they are protecting against Donald Trump. They are protecting their center of gravity, which is their relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. So when Donald Trump said, and we know that he must have kept this promise, otherwise they wouldn't be going after him the way they have been. And this is what these series of information operations, this is a large part of it. There's a number of reasons they're going after the president, but I see this as one of the major reasons. We're
talking with Lee Smith. The Permanent Coup is his newest book. The China question. So now I say this. He's going after China. And China is like the Soviet Union on steroids in terms of influence and infiltration, in my opinion. When we write the history of this period,
much worse, actually.
Much worse. No, I mean, university systems have been compromised, institutions, nonprofits have been compromised, our higher ed has been infiltrated. Anyway, you get the point. So China's against Trump, communist regime. Big tech doesn't like much of it. I mean, generally. Now the media, much of the media, the big CNN, MSNBC, obviously, how do you win?
Because you have the American people on your side. That's that was his promise. He said, "I'm going to." Other people have recognized this. Donald Trump was not the only person who's ever recognized it, but Donald Trump is the first person who became president who had recognized it and who was talking about this. And so the idea that Donald Trump is making good on that promise. This has, again, so you're talking about China. It is also the tech industry. It's the traditional media. It's the cultural industry as well. Whether we're talking about sports, especially the NBA, whether we're talking about Hollywood, whether we're even talking about the arts community in places like New York and Los Angeles, because their relationship, China is an enormous market for them to exploit. If you look at places like Sotheby's and Christie's, it's enormous. And so by Donald Trump saying, I'm taking that on, he took on an enormous class of those whose center of gravity rests with the Chinese Communist Party. It's an enormous deal. And so just to have done that is a historical, a profound move for a president. And how do you win? Again, I think the American people hear it. The American people heard it. The American people have been saying for a long time, saying we're dying here. We're getting crushed. Our elites, our leaders are selling us out to
Right.
China. What's happening? Now people understand, have a better, especially after the coronavirus, right? For all of the tragedies that have come out of this, one of the things that people now understand is what a serious threat. The people who didn't understand before, they now understand China is not a responsible actor in the community of nations. It's an enormous problem. So that's how I think that Donald Trump, that America comes out on top. You have a pro-American president, and you have the American public.
Yeah. We're talking with Lee Smith. And Lee's, I mentioned that your first book, The Plot Against the President, which I maybe take these two together. The first one was like, look, they tried to take the president down. This one is how it's a permanent coup.
Yeah.
The permanent coup. So we had like Michael Anton write a piece a few weeks ago about the coup coming. The November, you can hear there's 1,000 lawyers hired by the left. They're going to go out. Earlier today, Catherine Engelbrecht says to us, when you talk about True the Vote, she said they're not just going after swing states, they're going after Republican states, because if you cause chaos in a Republican state and tie up their electoral votes, you then can, when you go to the Electoral College, you have to have a true majority of all the electoral votes. It's not all the present, right? And so anyway, her point was, don't think it's only that. So the permanent coup, and in the book, the guy that is my hero of a lot of these is Mike Flynn, General Flynn, what's happened to him. But he's
a major part of that.
He's a major part of this book. In fact, Joe Flynn will be on the program on the countdown 2 nights from now to Tuesday night. Before we get to some of the book, do you have any hope that Durham is going to deliver?
I do. I'm very hopeful. I mean, Attorney General William Barr has been very clear that this is the reason why he returned to government service, right? To sort this particular issue out, which started before the 2016 election, the FBI's phony investigation into the Trump campaign. And that's why Mr. Barr came back, and that's why he appointed Mr. Durham to do this work. So I am optimistic. What I'm less optimistic about is the title is The Permanent Coup. So you mentioned Michael Anton's fantastic piece before, and Michael has a brilliant new book out.
Yeah, he does.
The coup, he says, that is the coming coup. This has been going on for 4 years. Mm-hmm. What we have now is we have different people rotated into it. What started in the lead up to the 2016 election with people with American spies, right? Former and current American spies. We now have, unfortunately, because it's very dangerous, not just unfortunately, it's very dangerously, we have former and perhaps current Pentagon officials as well. And I named some of them in that book, and the idea that they have joined to destabilize not just what we're leading into, but when we saw the riots, as the riots started to break out in the spring, former Pentagon officials helping to destabilize the American government. It's again, we continue to head into very dangerous and dark territory. But as I was saying before about President Trump, I'm optimistic about one thing, and that is I'm optimistic about the American public. Everyone understands what's at stake, and they are optimistic, and they are happy, I believe, in my reporting and just my speaking with people, to be living at such a meaningful time.
But the deep state, when you read this, The Permanent Coup, and you read about the names, and you go through them, and the Brennans and the Clappers, and those are the ones we know their names.
Right.
There's plenty of people. I was asking this about somebody. I could say I was asking General Flynn, about it. When you get up to the top level of the military in the last 25 years, there was a conscious, especially under Obama, weeding out of conservative, sort of patriotic Americans. That's just the way it was. You weren't going to advance. It's a political advancement. So we know Brennan's name and Clapper's name, and I hope we find out more about what they did when the Durham report. But there's plenty of people that are still in there that have their head down, that are part of the permanent class, right? Yeah.
My concern is we've been speaking about the deep state rightly for 4 years for the issues that you're addressing, the way that these people have been embedded into the bureaucracies. One of the things that I show in that book, and this comes back to General Flynn, is it's higher than the deep state. These aren't just intelligence bureaucrats. They're not just even spy chiefs. I mean, we have to remember John Brennan worked out of the Oval Office for 5 years before he became director of the CIA, right? One of the things that we know from documents that have been released over the last several months, and which I report about in the book, is we see the hand of Barack Obama and Joe Biden, especially when it comes to tasking FBI Director James Comey to investigate General Flynn. It's shocking, right? No matter how we feel about Barack Obama, and I imagine that you are not a big Barack Obama fan of his presidency. I'll be open. I was not either.
Right.
But I think nonetheless, we look at that and we see the hand of the President of the United States, and it's shocking to see that. So my concern, it's not just the different folks embedded in the bureaucracy. It's who's on top and who's moving it around, because the deep state is a living organism, right? They have interest, but they're not self-directed. They were directed over the last 4 years or during the Obama years by Barack Obama. And another argument that I make here, which comes out in one of the last chapters called Obama's Coup, is a lot of this is actually about preserving the policies and initiatives of the Obama administration.
Right.
And that's how I interpret the Joe Biden campaign.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is an avatar for Barack Obama's third term. That's what's happening. So
somebody should write a book, by the way. Maybe you'll tell me they have.
But
from the election day, when they were stunned that Trump won, until Trump sworn in, that's not 100 days. I wish it was. We could call it Obama's 100 days, whatever it is. Obama's 70 days. That in there is where I think that they went beyond. It might have been doing. It's a little bit like I tell people. If you didn't know what Dan Rather was when he flamed out and showed his colors and see him now, you would have thought all those years, well, maybe he was a liberal, but he did the news. He did it every night. And Obama, if he didn't have the 70 days of Trump, where they're unmasking everybody, they're going and day to day, and you can't tell me that somebody doesn't have the ability to piece that together if they wanted to, the emails and all, and know exactly what they did.
Well, we're starting to get a clearer idea of that, because another document that was released in the spring was the list of different Obama administration officials who were spying on General Flynn. Right, there were at least 30. There are actually at least 40. Because Susan Rice is not on that list, but we know that she was doing. She said she was doing it, and it included Joe Biden, who was spying on General Flynn. So what that tells us is, it describes a culture of espionage that was promoted in that administration. So we're starting to get a better idea of what they were doing, what the Obama administration was doing to the incoming Trump team. And I don't mean to belabor what some people are going to think is ancient history, or at least past history, by talking about Barack Obama. The point is that this is the culture that Joe Biden now represents. This is the culture, the political culture that Joe Biden now embodies. So it's important when we see this man who people are describing as a moderate, as just a 47-year swamp rat. There's something else that's going on here too. That's much darker and much more nefarious.
Lee Smith, the book here is The Permanent Coup: How Enemies, Foreign and Domestic, Targeted the American President. Different question. Oh, by the way, on all our platforms, if you have questions, send them in. Questions or comments, I'll ask them. Lee, our team will pass them on to me. I'll ask Lee if you have questions. A little different. Trump wins a second term.
Yeah.
How serious does he get at really going after these folks?
Right. I think that will continue. I think they're serious now. He's obviously outraged, and he's right to be. And I think actually the way the president's handled it, he's handled it well. He's right to take it personally, but he's also right to say this should never happen to an American president ever again. I think he'll take it very seriously. One point that I make in the book, and that I make generally, is regardless of what happens in November, the struggle, what's described in the Permanent Coup, the effort to undermine the foundations of the Republic, that struggle will continue past November, past January. So the chaos and the violence that they're threatening now, I think it's right to take it seriously, but this is going to go on for a while.
Speaking of chaos, when you say the Biden campaign, or whatever campaign it might have been, but it was clear Biden had I tell people when they said, I predicted Kamala Harris would get the VP. A lot of people did, but my reason was the number one endorsement, the number one candidate of it with endorsements by the superdelegates, the insiders of the Democrat Party, was Biden. Number two was Kamala Harris. Right, so in terms of the class of people that had become Obama, by the time his 8 years were over, he had the whole party, like Trump does already. But it wasn't Clinton's party anymore, even though she got the nomination. It was Obama's party. Everybody was an ambassador because of him and all. So there they are. But I feel like that it almost doesn't matter if Trump wins. Because, as you say, it's not going to end. They're not going to give up their. They're not going to throw up their hands.
No, it's not going to end. Look, you mentioned something important again to see the direction that the country's moving in. You talked about Kamala Harris, and I remember here in Washington hearing all the talk on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. It's like that's who Obama was backing, Kamala Harris, right? That's where the money was going. That's where the support was going. What happened? Kamala Harris proved entirely unappealing, inert, in fact, unlikable. What happens? Well, that's who pushed her through, right? This is the Obama Politburo who pushed her through, in spite of the fact that she proved absolutely unappealing to Democratic Party voters, right? So that's the way we're going. It's not about what the voters want. All these decisions are being made above their heads and are being made by a Politburo.
Well, and I saw you when we were waiting. We were David Horowitz on. You had a choice, not an echo, a copy of the updated book. And back then, Phyllis Schlafly in 1964 famously wrote about how the kingmakers kept giving the Republicans the same old echoes of the old things, and they kept losing. And that was her point. And I hope it's right. I hear from YouTube question: what is your understanding of how Democrats of goodwill don't see or admit to the clear lawbreaking by top Democrats? That's a good question. Like, when you look at Schiff, he's just a caricature of a politician. He clearly was lying. He was misleading. Sorry, that's my ringer. My kids changed my ringer to a duck. And that was actually the White House, Lee. I didn't answer the White House for you, but anyway. So we'll see what they have to say. Maybe they're watching. But what do you think?
Well, obviously, Adam Schiff is not a Democrat of goodwill. Look, one of the points that I make in this book, in the earlier book, The Plot Against the President, is that the press is a central part of this. None of these operations could have happened without the presses playing a central role in it. So that information is not getting out to people. There are some people who would change their opinions. I know Congressman Nunes said when he was doing their investigation, which I write about partly in this book, but a lot in the first book, The Plot Against the President, they wanted to get that information out to the American public. And they felt like they could count when are they going to get past the 50-yard line with that. It's very hard because the press is making sure that real information is not getting out there. They're a central part of the operation. Yeah.
But at a certain point, aren't there some Democrats? I guess not. It's Obama's party, it's Obama's world, so there's not Democrats, who say, I've had enough of this. This is too much.
Apparently, very few. Look, this is one of the reasons why they've had to target Trump the way they have. Right? What does Donald Trump say? Donald Trump says, I want to protect American labor from China and I want to protect the American manufacturing base from China, and I want to protect American workers from unfair practices like illegal immigrants. And he's racist. Donald Trump is racist, right? It's astonishing, but it works and it holds, right? So it's very hard to get that actual message out to people because they just throw so much garbage against the wall and it sticks.
More questions from Facebook. What's your next book about?
I don't know yet. That's a very good question.
Excellent.
If anyone has any suggestions, I'll be glad to hear them.
Is there any way to get Joe Biden to have to answer questions that voters need to know about?
I don't know. Look, I think that all the questions that we have are already answered, right? We see how the appearance of Joe Biden and what he's doing. Again, my case is that he's an avatar for an Obama third term. So that's my big answer about the Biden campaign.
Well, I tell people the only thing that might save the American people to see more answers is at a certain point, you meet these people at this level, when they're running for president, they get arrogant, they get confident. And
Yeah.
Joe Biden, he pictures himself president. I mean, when he remembers what, he may say, well, I'm going to just go do what I want to do. And, you're not going to tell me what to do. And maybe that's what gets it. We'll see. I mean, you think he has a debate? You think he does the debates?
I can't see into the crystal ball. It's hard to imagine it happening, but also I can't imagine him getting out of it at this point unless something magical happens. But what have we learned the last 4 years? all sorts of bizarre and ridiculous things happen because that's what's been going on between press and political operatives. That's what they're coming up with all the time. Maybe it'll be something spectacularly stupid, like the mailbox conspiracy theory.
Right.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least.
The violence in the cities.
Yeah.
When you watch that, do you think that's a piece of the permanent coup?
Absolutely. It's a central piece of it. But here's the thing. It's like, what are they doing? I mean, you have frontline Democratic Party militias, BLM and Antifa, and they're destroying blue cities. So what's going on? Right? It's a very interesting point. So when we talk about the post-election violence, how do we see that unfolding? And that's why an important part of this is, what are the role of the states? What do the states do? What do the governors do? What do the attorney generals in these states do? Do they, withhold certification of votes? Does the National Guard come out if there is violence? But I mean, it's terrible. Look, I mean, I was raised in New York City. I love New York City, and it's horrifying and disgusting what the mayor and what the governor of the state and the mayor of the city have let happen to what was at one time one of the world's great cities.
Facebook, I'm a fan who discovered Lee Smith on the Pro America Report radio show. That's good.
Is very kind.
And thank you for your great writing, Mr. Smith.
Well,
that's good. We like those comments. That's
all
good.
Right.
Someone says that they don't like either of us. We don't put them up on here.
Yeah.
We're like,
that's better even than a question.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah, that's nice.
Lee, what happens with the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Reed, I know you don't do crystal balls, but it's fun to try to make you.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, look, I mean, I see a lot of the commentary on social media, and it was like, well, we have to hang tough and do this. Look, it's perfectly legitimate. It's not like this is, we have to stick what down their throat? If we really want to stick something down their throat, let's think of something nasty to stick down their throat. This is a legitimate thing. Donald Trump is the president. This is what the president does, and we hold the majority. The Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. Why is this such a strange thing? Because, as AOC says, because it was a dying woman's final wish.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Well, let's talk about that for 1 second. If you make it to be a Supreme Court justice, it's like I tell people, it's like being you're a big league political player.
Yeah.
And she was, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying let's not pretend these people are different than they are. Yeah. Same thing with Scalia. Same thing with all these rights. You have to have political savvy. The stars have to align like one in a million. Right. She was a masterful political player in the 70s and 80s, pushing her agenda. 70s mostly, and then got on the bench. And for a decade, if you're a Court of Appeals judge, you're a political player trying to move up. She did it. The idea that we would listen and when someone has a deathbed statement about not picking the thing. To me, it was like embarrassing.
Well, I don't think that's her, actually. And I don't think it's her relatives. I think that's the Obama cult.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's where it comes from. Do I have evidence? Look, I've been studying the bizarre political machinations of that third world Politburo for 12 years now. That looks like it's the Obama cult. It may be the late Mrs. Ginsburg or her relatives. I tend to doubt it.
All right, one last question. Facebook, where can we find information to share about what the Democratic Party stands for on issues, and a simple explanation for elderly folks who are not sure that's your...
Well, no, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's kind of hard. We know what they're doing. They stand up and they're in opposition to Donald Trump, and that's sort of it. Right. And the things that they're for, the things that Donald Trump is for, which is what the president keeps saying. Joe Biden is he's stealing from me.
Right.
Which I guess is the sincerest form of flattery. But what are the things? Well, look, the other things that they stand for are, if we had a lot more time, we could break it down. I know we don't, but I know quite well in terms of foreign policy, one of the things that Joe Biden is talking about is re-entering the Iran nuclear deal, that was Obama's idea to legalize the nuclear weapons program of a terrorist state.
Right.
So if you want to know what they're doing in foreign policy in terms of dangerous parts of the world, that's what they're doing. And what has Joe Biden said about China? Joe Biden said they're a serious competitor, but the real problem is Russia. No, Russia is not the real problem. Right. Russia is an adversarial, at least frequently an adversarial state. But right now, China is the major strategic threat to the United States in every conceivable fashion. The fact that Joe Biden doesn't understand that, or he won't describe it as such, tells you about where the Biden campaign is.
Yeah. Well, to your point, if it's Obama's third term, that was one of his things he has to try to resurrect that. Okay, Lee. I might have asked you this a little bit, but what can normal voters do? They're out there, normal citizens. They know you've explained the permanent coup, the plot against the president. We now have all the Lee Smith. What can they do in the next 3 days?
Well, assuming they've read my book,
right?
No, I mean, keep the faith. I mean, keep the faith. Right. This is, as I say, we're heading into some dangerous territory. Some dark places. But again, I found, and it's really encouraged me, that people are just like, wow, what a time. We get to stand up and say what we believe about our country, what it stands for: promotion and protection of individual liberties, love of family and community and country, respect and admiration for our symbols, for our heroes, including the flag. I mean, it's great. Just keep the faith. Just people, keep your head up and your chin down, and keep walking into the fire.
All right, Lee Smith, The Permanent Coup is his recent book, and he's got a new baby boy, August. Right. So Augustus, right? Augustus. Thank you. Pretty cool. And thanks, Lee. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to do another quick.